As I said, the open source community eventually gets what it wants. Therefore, a tool called Wine has been created. Despite the fact that most popular software is created primarily for Windows or Mac OS, globally, Mac OS users don't constitute a bigger market than Linux users. But in the US, 10% of the users work in Apple products. Linux offers a huge potential when it comes to multimedia file support or 3D graphics acceleration. OpenGL is a tool comparable to, or even more effective than, DirectX. However, the gaming industry, unfortunately, largely ignores Linux. On the other hand, there are also some notable exceptions. For example, the ID Software Company, the developers of some popular games like Doom or Quake, usually create their games in such a way that it's relatively easy to run them on any software platform. And by that, we not only mean Linux, whose market share is a few percent. Some games, for example Doom, have been re-implemented for the Solaris platform, whose market share is less than 1%. So there are some nice exceptions. ID Software is generally noteworthy, because it usually publishes their game engines for free use. Thanks to this, many Linux games are based on Quake Engine, or Doom 3 engine, with different textures and sound effects. Many good quality FPP games are created in this way. Wine was created in order to make it possible to run an application created for Windows under Linux without the need for re-implementing or rewriting its code. However, this is not an emulator. Wine is an implementation of the Windows API. Because API is widely available, well-known and well-described, not only does Wine work pretty well, but also Microsoft can't do anything to sabotage this project. If it wasn't for Wine, you wouldn't be able to use many applications available for Windows in Linux. That includes both simple applications and complex packages, which we'll talk about later. Interestingly, most implementations of software available for Mac OS are created in the exact same way. The only difference is that the Apple company, as a commercial brand, supports identical solutions dedicated for Mac OS. Because it's backed by a commercial company, it's being developed at a faster pace and is more stable than Wine. But on the other hand, the latter supports more applications, especially the most popular ones. Currently, Wine is a very powerful tool indeed. There are even versions of Wine created for specific programs in order to achieve the best performance. Wine's creators are aware of the user's expectations, and therefore they develop it in such a way so as to make it as compatible with most popular applications as is possible. For example, the latest implementation of Wine allows users to run Diablo 3. Because Wine is basically an implementation of API, applications usually don't run slower than in Windows. Actually, they may even run faster, because there exist Wine's implementations dedicated and therefore well adjusted to specific applications. Still, you won't be able to open every application in Linux. You have to keep in mind that Windows is a closed system. This means that creators of solutions such as Wine had to work out many details on their own. Also, Wine is a very complex tool, so inevitably not every application will run all that well, and some won't run at all. On the website appdb-winehq.org, there's a list of all supported applications, along with information about how well they work, what you can use them for, which components of the application work and which don't. It often happens that the application itself would work just right, but the installer program doesn't. So in the end, you can't install the application. On this website, you can also find tips on how to install certain distributions and how to configure them so that they work in the most efficient and optimal way. Also, You'll often find there are complete step-by-step instructions for what you need to do, what additional packages you need to install, and what additional Windows components you need to add to your version of Wine, so that you'll be able to launch the game. You'll also learn which version of Wine is best suited for a given game. Wine is, in general, a product-specific tool. There are different versions for different products. A serious disadvantage of Wine is that it's not very stable. To be more precise, this means that although the version 1.0 offers support for Application X, version 1.1 may not. Developers try to improve the compatibility with one application, but at the same time, it may mean that another application will work worse. Such situations happen much less often since the version 1.1, but sometimes they still do. In the later part of the course, we'll learn how to solve this problem. Although each application will perform differently in different versions of Wine, we'll find out what to do to ensure that all applications work well. On initial use, Wine creates a hidden directory. Wine with a complete hard disk architecture and file systems similar to those that are used in Windows. That's where all the applications will be installed. Essentially, this directory simulates the function of the drive C in Windows.